Hey, gang. Well, let's do a quick sound check here. Check, check, check. Microphone seems to be on. Let me see if I can see the chat. Make that font bigger for these old eyes. There we go. Hey, my case. I got on a little early. I wanted to make a little noise. We've got some guests coming at 2. Synth Samurai. Who else is in here? Audrey? Karen? How's the level? Sound okay? And let me know if you can hear the mic. The microphone. Just confirm for me, because I've changed everything up. There's some low for you, Audrey. Hope it's coming through. Mic sounds good. Thank you, my case.
Hello.
Hey, there's a guest. Someone popped in.
It's me.
Hey, Steve. And I see. Oh, Garen. Yeah. And Garen. Cool. I don't. Let me see here.
There you go. Camera on.
There you go.
Oops.
We've got some guests today, and I started a little early because I just wanted to make a little noise at the beginning.
Okay, we're online.
Pardon?
Is the stream on YouTube?
Oh, yeah. Stream's up and running.
Hi, everyone. See if I can find them.
The chat room is not being displayed currently.
Okay. Oh, I see you. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute that out. I've got the chat.
That sounds great. I have to look at the chat.
So if I can pop that out, I think you can do that, can't you? Let's see.
Yep. Yes, Wookie, I started early. So
if I move the chat over there, I should hopefully be able to go back to the stream there. There we go. So now I can see you in Discord, but I can watch the chat.
All right, perfect.
Hey, my case. See, you've said hello to me.
Let's see who's in here right
Excuse me.
now. My case. Garen's in the chat as well, although he's getting his camera
Yeah.
set up. Wookie, yeah, I started early. I just wanted to make some noise.
There's Wookie. Oh, there's Wolf. Hi, Wookie.
So let's do this. Speaking of starting, let's just drone a little bit.
Not sure if I'm working correctly yet.
I hear Garen.
Yep, we can hear you, Garen.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to drop out. Actually.
We'll have to do some leveling with microphones and things like that, but give me about 10 minutes. You guys just chill for a bit. I'm going to make a little noise here.
Go ahead. Go on to YouTube and have a watch.
Hello, Ryan. Oh wow, that's going to be. I'm gonna butcher it. Ryan Durdervader Sulman. I don't know if I should be doing that with a French R or not. Hey Davi, we're a little early today. I'm going to make a little noise for 10 minutes and then we're going to have a little group therapy session.
Hey, Davey. Or Davey. I don't, how do you do that? Is it Davey or Davey? And Pat just came in. Can't hear the synth on the stream. Okay. Luke,
Yeah.
I can't hear the synth on the stream on the YouTube.
Let's see. It's broadcasting, so it should be there. Guys, let me know out in the chat.
Yeah,
you should
chat.
hear a bunch of arpeggiation and a drone underneath. Let me know if you can hear that.
Let me know if you can hear that. Let me know if you can hear that.
Oh, somebody's rebroadcasting the stream.
Oh, that's right. It's because
You have to use headphones there, Steve, or whoever.
It's because
You have to use headphones there, Steve.
it's because if you use headphones,
was that because of me?
Yeah, I think you're rebroadcasting the stream.
Yeah, I must be. I was muted though, so it shouldn't have worked. Very odd.
That's right.
Okay, don't worry. I'll stick on the video stream then. That's not a
Work it
problem.
out.
The loop of doom track, as Ed said. Oh, hello, casual noises as well. You got the flu. That's terrible. Hope you get over that soon. That's terrible. Oh, you can see my cat in the background. Look. Hey, Dobbin. I hope everyone can hear me anyway. I don't know, the cat can't. I've got earphones on. Of course. I'm not sure. Oh, you just moved me. Okay. Is that... Hey, it's going upside down. You're in Australia?
I'm afraid to look. Let's go look.
Garen's in down under.
What is the nonsense
Yeah,
here?
Mel.
Garen is inverted. Nice.
Let me close my studio window and then I'll figure out how to get myself right side up. For some reason, Luke and I tested earlier, and for some reason everything worked, and now it doesn't. So
That's all right.
I had the same problem. My webcam wasn't working. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Hey, Tracker. I'm just going to kill my video for a second, Luke, because I'm going to take my jumper off. I don't want everyone to see it.
That's fine.
I'll be right back. I mean, I'm still here, the voice-wise. I'm taking my earphones off so you won't be able to hear me. Oh, it's hot in here. Oh. Sort that out. Back on camera. There we go. Garen, you're still inverted, mate.
yeah, I've noticed that.
I gotta look at this. Hold
I
on.
mean, watch out. All the blood's going to rush to your head.
I know. I'm going to turn bright red and my head will explode.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I may have to drop back out and come back in again. I'm not sure why it's working so differently than it did when Luke and I tested, 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, something like
It's
that?
all good. Hey, it's the
Go and just turn the camera over. Simple.
continuous improvement.
It's not that. It's mounted on a ply with a screw, and it's bolted down here. Well, let's see. We're not on air with this yet anyway, so. Give me the IP address of that silly camera.
So, is Trust Lamont or Lamar? It must be Lamont. Is that right?
Trusto is Lamont Dixon.
Yeah.
Our good friend.
Hi, Lamont, and hi, Marilyn.
And Moser 505 is his brother Lamar.
Yeah.
And
I'll get used to him.
Symptoms of Reality is Marilyn.
Cool stuff. And hello, who's that? Pat Brady as well. I'm trying to spot the new names as they come.
All right, do me a favor though. Shut up. Engage in the chat. I have an urge to make a little noise, so.
Okay, I'll do so.
Thank you. let's flip back and see if we've got Garen right side up.
Yep. It's fixed.
There we go. All right, we bring the chat window back up. Thanks for indulging me there. I needed to make some music.
No problem. Luke, I went on a different browser and listened to you. Did it have any effect whatsoever?
So chat, let me know if you didn't hear any of the music I was just playing, because if you didn't, I've screwed something up. So let us know. Because it seems from my end to be broadcasting. So I'm not sure, Steve, why you might not be hearing it. Unless there's a boycott somewhere between here and there. But let me...
Oh, I was hearing it here until I had to mute it out to take care of stuff. So
okay. So it's okay, because all I really want to do is hear you guys. So we've got a little time here. We're officially going to get started around 2 o'clock. Let me say hello to people here. Ooh, we got here. Let's see. Synth Samurai was in earlier. Craig, Garen. So Ryan, I'm just going to call you Ryan. Hi, Ryan. Welcome. Welcome back. If you've been previously, I don't remember. Davi, Wookie, My Case, Casual Noises, Pat Brady, can hear the synths. Good. The Loop of Doom. Yeah, there was some feedback there. Originally, somebody was rerouting in. That's okay. Let's see. Daman, Tracker Jack, Quattro Bagina. Nice. Hey, there's Trusto. Yep, I jumped in a little early. I needed to make some noise. Let's see. Paul Artola, welcome back. Symptoms of Reality. Yeah, it was going to be at 2. I just decided to start a little early to make some noise. But 2 o'clock is the official start. So you guys can walk. You can go away if you want till 2. It's fine. Let's see. Who else is popping in here? Biscuit, good to see you. Steve is also in the Discord chat. So what we're doing today is something a little different. We're doing something kind of like a podcast. There's a few folks on the Discord that we're going to get in, share our faces, and talk about some synthy topics. I'm going to noodle a little bit in the background. There will be some drones and some arpeggiation running. But if you're here for a concert today, I will disappoint you. We are going to chit chat about synth things and have opinions and talk to you in the chat and see what your opinions are and things like that. And this was the sort of the brainchild of one of the guys in the Discord. And he was like, we should try this as a podcast. And so we're doing that. This isn't changing the channel or anything like that. We may do this like once a month where we get together and do this stuff. But let's see who else is floating around in here. Let's see. Scrolling through the chat. I don't know the background for Biscuit Moon, so someone's going to have to explain that to me eventually. So, let's see. Garen got right side up. That's good.
yeah, but I'm backwards now.
I think I'm backwards as well, like left to right backwards. I think that's just the nature of the camera. I'm not worried about it though. Let's see. I think that's it. Did I see Andy float through? There he is. Hi, Andy. Andy, I didn't know if you were going to join us at 2. You're welcome to if you want to. Oh, and Josh and man who won his fight with the razor. Okay, cool. All right. So, let's do the flippy thing. All right. So there's gentlemen, there's some faces. As more people show up, I think my friend Joe, Task Boy, is going to pop in here around 2:30 or 2. And the topics for today were going to be, I wrote them down. With dramatic, you guys, so the people in the chat can't hear this unless they're listening to the stream, and I don't advise it because it gets ugly. But we can do dramatic musical notation when we do events and things like what the topics are. So we're going to talk about some tired old chestnuts that aren't actually that tired. So we've synth collectors here, and we have musicians who use synths. And so there's this sort of push and pull between how many synths are too many synths in your studio, and you know, how many synths is not enough synths in your studio. So we were going to talk about that a little bit, collecting versus using. And then we're going to talk about, we had an observation the other day where we said, you know, half the time like I'm reconfiguring my studio, right? And I used to have my studio configured so that it was a whole bunch of synths all flowing together down and being controlled by Ableton in a central sort of way. And that was the system. And I've since broken that up, and now I've got clusters, and I've got isolated clusters, some synths over there that talk to each other and nothing else, and some over there and some over there. And somebody's got a loop going. Careful there, you're picking up the stream. So there's some discussion around the joy of system building with synthesizers versus the joy of making music. Those are two completely separate things, and you can do them both, and we want to just talk about what everybody's take on that is. And I want to talk about something called Schoenbergism, which is a personal flaw that I have that we'll talk about later at the very end if there's time. And then we can always talk about the boring stuff that everyone likes to fight over, like analog versus digital and gas and things like that. But that is that's the plan. So who do we have here? So we've got Steve and Garen M, and Steve, what? Sonus Lucius? Is that it?
Sonus Lucis.
Yes. And what does that translate to?
It's a sound of light in Latin.
There you go. And chat, give us feedback on levels and things like that. If anybody is too quiet or too loud, let us know. But we already have some commentary here. What do we say? Biscuit says, if you've got a computer, one synth is enough. But if you can afford it, a few is enough, in your opinion? Okay. I didn't get in an argument. I heard an argument take place after the fact. I watched a video where someone was having an argument where the argument was that all you really need is one really good synth. And if you've got that, that's all you need. And why there's one path you can take where you get 5 or 6 very inexpensive small synths that do, a limited amount of thing. Each has maybe a focused or a limited sort of focus on what it does synth-wise. And you can make music that way. But someone said, well, if you add up the total of that, you could just go get this really nice synth that does everything that those do. Right? So why would you do that? Why don't you just learn, rather than having to then learn 5 different synthesizers? And do you have time to do that? You could just spend your time learning this one expensive synth that does everything. And one of the points back that I was thinking immediately was that, well, I make music live, right? I do jams, so I need 5 voices. Just because I've got one synth that can replicate all these other things, it doesn't mean it's not necessarily multi-timbral. I can't send it 5 melodies over MIDI and have it play all of them. It'll probably only do one, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, someone just joined for a start.
Oh, that's fine. Task Boy's here. Joe. We started a little early, Joe. I just decided to make some noise.
There he is, most of him.
And Joe, your mic is muted, I think.
Looks like it, yep.
That's better.
I'll put forth an answer to your question, Luke. Sure. I mean, I used to have a very fine synth that would do everything, and it did everything very well. Excuse me, but there gets to be the practicality of trying to do everything in one box, and it's kind of akin to doing it in the computer, but by the same token, where the individual synths to me are advantageous is control. I could make any kind of sound I wanted. I had a Korg Kronos, and it would make any sound I ever wanted to make. But doing it conveniently, especially in performance, could be problematic because we don't have individual controls. You have a subset of controls available to you. On something like a Kronos, and as Paul says in chat, no one synth can do everything, and I don't know that that's entirely true anymore, but one synth can certainly do a lot, and I mean, to the point, there's going to be things that it can't quite do, but to me it got down to control. For gigging and cover bands, the Kronos was fantastic. But for stuff like I'm doing now, and like most of us are doing now, there's not enough control in one big homogeneous multi-timbral, multi-engine synth to really get the job done well.
Okay. I think that's a fair opinion. What does the rest of you think? And Andy, you are totally welcome to come in here. Andy's hiding in the chat. He's like, Force Company 5's a crowd.
Let me chuck my 2p worth in. I've only got one. That's just a micro freak. So that's my one synthesizer, apart from all the soft synths I've got. And we were talking earlier on, Luke, about the fact I've got a lack of space here. You can see. Oh, by the way, can I just introduce my cat over there who's kipping? So say hello to Luna, everyone. Yes, she's just woken up. There she is. So she's on a black towel, though, so it might be difficult for you to see her.
Yeah, it could be a tribble or anything at that point.
Yeah, it could be. Anyway, so that's a cat. Yes.
Alleged cat. Okay.
Anyway, so I've got two problems. One is I haven't got the means to get them anyway, quite honestly. And B, I haven't got the space to put them anyway. So I'm kind of on that side of it. I would, of course, love to own many synths. I'd love to own a DX7. It's just always been one of my dreams to own one. And I'm really partial to a Hydra synth or a subsequent, but way out my price range. So unfortunately, that's basically me.
What's your process for making music then with a single synth, Steve?
I haven't actually explored the microfeet very much yet. I do all the stuff in the box at the moment.
Okay.
But I've just got myself an FX box to widen out the sound of the microfeet because it does sound very mono, and I like a stereo sound. So I'll be playing with that in the near future.
Okay. Just a comment from Biscuit. Is the video supposed to be jittery? Biscuit, I think when I flip back and forth between screens on my virtual desktop, it may cause some jitter. Let me know if it's constant or if it's just intermittent. So anyway, keep going. So Joe, you get your mic working? I'm going to say that's a no.
I heard him earlier.
Nope. Joe's going to grace us with his face, but it looks like you're... All right, well, you work on that, because I want to hear your opinions, but... That's cool. What is it? Continuous improvement. Slow iteration. We'll get better over time. Go ahead,
His
Steve.
mic's muted. I can see the symbol on his screen.
Yeah.
Bottom right.
Let's see. Yeah, you're right. Your Discord, you've got your Discord is muted. It looks like I see a mic icon. So feel free to jump in if you want to. While you work that out. So I don't know. So we had this so we're having this discussion, or I was witnessing this discussion. It's so weird time slicing on the internet, right? So I was watching a video recording of a live broadcast after the broadcast was live, getting in there, and it was an interesting struggle because it seemed like it was split. I was surprised at how many people are like, you only need one synth. You just need one good synth and then you're good to go. And I just can't work that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
I would agree. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, I think I'd like a few. If I could do it, I would like a couple. So maybe a couple of boards along here, something. Just because, I mean, you're not going to get a wavetable synth and an analog synth in the same box, are you? Anyone tell me if there's a synthesizer that does that with a keyboard? I mean, there might be.
Oh, you get a virtual analog anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
But
you can. I think the
multiple controllers.
I think the example that was being pointed out was like the poly. What is the new one from Korg? The multi-poly.
Oh, the multi-poly.
Yeah, the multi-poly was like the argument saying, just get one of those and you're good to go. You don't have to. The counter was like you could go pick up a bunch of inexpensive stuff from Donner or Behringer or whatever, and those are fine. And I would, in my case, I would need those. I want separate voices, right? I don't want to the old sort of multi-tracking sort of way where it's like, okay, we'll use a synth and record the first track and put the bass line down, then we'll use the synth and record, the stab part and record that. I can't work that way. I need separate things. But it leads to a certain amount of bloat, right? Because as you add more voices, you need more inputs, and then when your inputs are full, you need to buy more inputs, and then you're like, okay, well, I've got extra inputs, I should buy more synths, and then you buy more synths, and it gets you to this nightmare of you're a collector first and then a music maker second, which might be fine, right? That's another place where you have to like work, find peace with yourself on what you're going to be doing there, right?
Can we say hello to Andy, who's just jumped in?
Am I on?
There he
You are
is.
negative.
Andy's in
You
there.
were.
Is it better now?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's a bit better. You've still got a bit some... Oh, you
There
just
you
jumped
go.
into it again.
Now we can see the beard.
Weird.
Remember, there's a lag between us speaking and the result on the screen.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, this is a bit tricky, isn't it?
We've also got Aya in here as well, but he's got video on mic.
Yep, that's okay.
You can hear me, okay? Can you hear me? Luke, you're a bit quiet, Luke. Sorry about these little. I've only just got back in from we were out today this afternoon anyway. So
I can always turn up my mic gain. There you go.
I could. I think you can turn up each other or alter volumes within Discord, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
That-
So,
you're clear
how
though. I think
do you
you're
do that
level.
then?
Ask the chat.
Just right-click on their image and it will give you the volume slider.
Got it. Yeah. Right. Super. All right.
Hello, gentlemen.
Thanks,
there he
Biscuit.
is.
It's constantly
There he is.
intermittent. Okay, about every 5 seconds. All right. Well, we'll see what happens.
I think we just heard Aya there.
Yes, we did.
Nice.
I was just saying hello.
It's Enzo, isn't it?
Yes, it is Enzo.
Enzo, I'll try and remember that.
We are spread out across the globe for sure.
It's 6 a.m. here. The kids are asleep, so I'm just going to whisper a little bit.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So Enzo or Andy, do you guys have an opinion? We were talking about how many synths are the right number of synths to have, sort of. Like, can you get by with one really good synth, or do you need multiple synths?
Multiple.
I'd say for me, I'd need multiple.
Yeah.
But I'd be looking at synths that do more than one thing. So if it's like the Syntact where it's like 12 voices, you can count it as 12 monosynths. Or like the Rev 2 where you can split it and you get 2 synths, that way you can do one as bass and the other one as leads or the ARPs.
Yeah.
Or specific utility sort of thing. I would not be purchasing a very expensive, not single voice, but I guess I would not be purchasing a synth without flexibility that allows me some greater degree of flexibility. I don't have the space.
Yeah.
That's why I end up using VSTs a lot. But if I had no choice, I would prefer hardware, but it would have to be really picky on the hardware, like the value for money, the functionality for the money. Those constraints start to play in a lot more. Because I'm kind of like you, Luke. I really need the feedback of all the things playing at the same time, because I can't just do one track. That really stops me flat. I do not think of the bass line first. I think of random bits of the song and I shuffle them around. I might have an idea of what I want, but the majority of the time I iterate really quickly.
Yeah.
If I have all the things playing at the same time, I can't do it one by one.
For me, it stems back from childhood, really, because I wanted to be a conductor for an orchestra, right? As a small child, my father worked at Telarc Records in Cleveland, and back when they only did classical music. And I wanted to write music and have it performed by an orchestra or by a group. And the simplest way to do that, the most straightforward way when you're, 8, is, I want synthesizers are cool. I want a synthesizer that'll play the violin and then the cello part and the viola, et cetera, and you go through. So that pattern translates very simply into my worldview of how I like to run my synth studio. And I want them all to play what I send to them MIDI-wise as I from a sequencer, basically. In the chat, Paul Artola said something interesting. He records 16 passes or stems and then performs them in playback, so that's how he performs live. And that is a completely valid way to perform, but I can't do that. There's something about to me that's live arrangement, which this is a really thin hair to split. That's people who work with samples and people who work with stems and loops, and they do live arrangement and performance manipulation of the audio. That is an art form in itself, but that's not an art form I aspire to, and I don't like to do that. I'm not saying it's bad. It's totally valid, and lots of cool things come out of it, and I've seen awesome performances. But that's not an option for me. So when I do go play, if I do a live performance where I want to go through a song structure, their sequence, this is where you really split the hairs, right? I've got 5 synths playing these voices. One of them I'm literally laying hands on a keyboard or a grid, and I'm playing a melody there. And the other 4 are playing the parts of the song that are being sent to them from a sequencer, right? And it could be a Launchpad Pro or a Metropolis or something like that. So there's a hair splitting there. I'm not arranging audio and manipulating audio. I'm manipulating the synths. I'm laying hands. If I want to do a filter sweep on that part over there, I reach over to do that. But the MIDI that's driving the notes being played there is coming from a sequencer. So it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But I prefer to work that way than to render things down to audio. That's just me. How do you guys, anyone here? Like Andy, I know you're entirely sequenced. Garen, how are you working?
I do a mixture of sequence and live. But like to your comment about using the Metropolis, when you had the modular setup running and you were using the Metropolis, you would be manipulating the Metropolis. So you would be altering the sequence while you were doing the performance.
Yeah.
So you might have the Metropolis start a thing, and then you'd play something else, and then you'd reach over and make changes to the Metropolis sequence. Is it going to be 3 notes in the sequence, 8 notes in the loop, whatever it's going to be, and then come back to playing, and maybe come back to playing something else?
Yeah, it's a different kind of manipulation than what you would do with audio manipulation. But they're both forms of musical manipulation. Just I prefer doing it in the meta source MIDI than in the audio.
Yes. Yeah, and I will usually have a number of loops prepared. If I'm working on something that is that has loops going, I'll have a number of loops that are prepared, and I'll switch between them. And I think that's kind of sort of what Paul may do. I've not actually seen Paul play yet, so I will do some of that, and then I may jump onto that same instrument that's being sequenced and play that live.
Yeah,
as well.
Shout out to Paul for knowing who Eric Kunzel is. That's awesome.
Yes.
Way to go. Way to go, man. Most people don't know Kunzel and the Cleveland Orchestra. So I used to live in Cleveland. Cleveland is an awesome town. Cleveland rocks. I'll throw it out there now. If you search YouTube for Cleveland rocks, you'll get an awesome video by Drew Carey.
And real quick, Paul just asked if playing machine or push also verboten, and absolutely, I would say no. It's very similar to choosing which loop you're going to have playing live in Ableton, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, once you get into a DAW, right, the line is completely blurred, right? If you're using a push, you can be generating MIDI with your left hand on the push, and then hold a button down to get a different view where you go to your performance audio tools and start doing the glitch beat repeat stuff or whatever, or start doing live arranging of those clips that are being fired. That could be audio, could be MIDI, right? So yeah, I'm making a distinction where, that's why I say splitting hairs. For me, I lean towards the meta MIDI side, not the audio side. Not better, just that's where I'm at. So that's all.
Yeah, I don't do any of that. I can't even play the instrument half the time. So I sequence everything on the door. Even if it's a loop, even if I have, because Ableton's got that loop workflow, but very rarely do I use the loop workflow. I mostly use the arrangement side of the same things. So even if I do make a loop, it's only there for a short amount of time before I change it to another clip. as Ableton calls it, because it's not, it doesn't. And then even then I might rearrange things, and I can't really play the instrument either. So half the time if I am playing, it's mostly like, oh, here's a little fun little sequence I did, and then record the MIDI and then go into Ableton and correct it for the key and everything from there, just by moving the mouse and everything. Because I don't know how to play the keyboard at the moment.
Yeah. Jeff Hopkins in the chat. Jeff, can you elaborate what you mean by trigger a cut every 1 bar? Because I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm curious. Sorry to interrupt there. Paul asks if he gets bonus points for owning Cleveland Orchestra with Quinzel CD 1812. Interesting. I got a story about that. My father was present. My dad worked at Telearch Records when I was a kid, and he was there for the recording of that, of the 1812. And when they recorded it, the 1812 Overture has cannons going off. And he came home from work one day and was frustrated, and he was relating to me the story of how they were trying to calibrate what size gunpowder charge should be in the cannon and what should be the distance between the microphones in the cannons, because they were outside the performance hall. The cannons were outside. And he came home and related the story to me where the charge was too large and the microphones were too close, and they kept destroying the diaphragm on the microphones as they were recording the cannons, and they would have to stop, because the thing about Telearch Records was they do no processing. They were the first company to do digital recording to vinyl. So they had basically their idea was, we're not EQing, we're not compressing, we are doing as perfect microphone placement as we can, and then starting the digital tapes, and the orchestra would perform, and that would be it. So they would kept blowing out the diaphragms on these microphones until they finally got it right. They'd have to start over from the beginning. Talk about an expense, right? Anyway, there's a side note, side story.
And part of Paul's question was, is that a bar, a bar to set? And I would say yes. That recording is one of the most fantastic recordings of anything I think ever done.
Yeah, I like all of Telearch's classical stuff. Okay, we're it's a synth show. We're talking about classical recordings from the 80s, right. But that's okay. Let's see. Did Jeff ever get back? Let's see.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeff says they take an 8-bar audio loop, cut it into 1-bar loops, and then sequence trigger them 1 bar at a time in order to appear to play the loop. Kind of a common in the MPC scene. So I've seen them do that. I have seen people do that where they do it sequentially, so that there's no audible difference between just playing the loop and letting it play through, or there's a skill involved with having to hit those 1-bar triggers each time. But you can then also mix and match, right? I think I'm fairly certain that what happens is their performance may start with the first pass through, they're doing it linearly, and then after that they start mixing them up and mixing and sort of changing the order around. And I don't know, it can be really compelling. It comes down to what's the audio that's happening there, right? So it's just another technique. So, but Jeff's going to vote that in as it seems silly. So okay. I'm not throwing Jeff under the bus, but
we're talking about playing live here now, aren't we? We're not talking about production. We're talking about
I think
live performance.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to production, like certainly. So you guys, let's go around and you tell me if you're recording and you're not streaming. Like, if I can sequence it, I sequence it. I do live performance to capture the melodies into the sequencer, but once they're in there and they're, I'll tweak them or clean them up, I don't perform again. So like if a production of a song for me takes a month, there's actually only live playing in the first week, right? And after that, it's literally production and manipulating all the MIDI and the meta stuff and just hitting play, basically. How do you guys do it? I mean, Andy, for example, Andy, you have to perform, right? Because you're on the modular.
Well, yeah, at the moment, yeah. I mean, but I've only had the modular since 2017. So I mean, I've done music creation, production, or whatever you want to call it. I've done it all sorts of different ways. I've recorded MIDI live, which I've then had to fix because my playing's always been crap. So it's great with MIDI. You can drag your notes around and get everything on the bar and on the grid and stuff.
Yep.
I've done one instrument at a time, put ideas down and built the ideas up as you go along, and add one layer after another. I've done it that way. Produce contrived stuff, which is what I call it. It's not a negative word. It's just that the difference between making stuff up and fixing it with overdubs and whatever else to get it to match exactly what your expectations are, compared to what I'm doing now, which is playing sort of like most of the stuff I've done for the last 18 months has been live performance. But that's just a recent thing. But I've done it always. The only thing that I haven't done really, and coming back to the discussion on loops, is I've never used loops. But I would never call anyone out for using loops. There are no rules, are there? We can do whatever we want to do, whether it's live or producing or whatever. Because I don't know anything about the MPC community, so I don't know how they work when it comes to getting something down to tape. I guess it's like the old. The MPC crowd would be doing like a stereo recording from a live performance by triggering loops or whatever via the SB404 or whatever it is they use. And I don't know the names of these pieces of equipment, but there's all sorts of equipment out there for triggering loops.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, yeah, I've got no real sort of gripe about how we do anything. As long as we're doing something, that's the main thing.
Oh, I've got a gripe. I've definitely got a gripe, but I'll save it for a few minutes from now.
Okay, so move along then. I'm open, and I have done it always. Like I said, apart from triggering loops, because I've never used Ableton, which is probably one of the more common DAWs for triggering loops and stuff. I've only ever used DAWs that record linear performances, whether it be MIDI or audio.
Yeah, there's a line that you cross when you enter the audio domain, right? And all the tools, the MPC, the 404, was the Teenage Engineering Calculator one. Even like a space echo, right? A delay effect that you use as a tape loop, right? There's an entire art out there. I seem to recall. I don't remember if it was a website or if I was on a website and I saw a book that was basically like the Bible of how to write music using tape loops and multiple Roland space echoes, right? I think my favorite, one of the earliest VSTs I ever bought was from Expert Sleepers, the modular guys. They make some software effects, and they make a looper that emulates a space echo like Pro Gold Ultra, like a crazy, as long as we're working in software, let's go really over the top with it. It's called Augustus Loop.
Augustus Loop, yeah.
It's one of my favorite, and it's the ugliest VST you've ever seen.
Well, that's in hardware now. I mean, it's in the distings.
Is it? Everything's in the disting.
Sleeve, yeah.
The disting is basically like this gravity well that sucks in all functionality for music. Eventually, it'll consume everything.
Well, there's a lot of modular nowadays that is completely in the digital domain now. Like the disting and the entire disting line is all digital. Like even some of the make noise modules coming out like Spectrophone are all digital. Especially the effects stuff is all digital nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's only so much you can do in the analog domain. You can do a lot, but how do you guys feel? I know how you all feel, everyone in this room probably, but like as far as analog versus digital, in synthesis or effects or processing, it doesn't matter. Do anyone want to make any strong statements? I think it's fine.
Only that. Whatever works.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. Whatever you need to do, you do it with whatever you need to do it with. It's quite simple.
I will say, from an engineering point of view, as a software engineer, software beats hardware. And from a straight point of view, partly because you can do so much with it, and with the microprocessors nowadays, they're so powerful. DACs can sample so quickly at high accuracy, and so the ADCs back from digital to analog and analog to digital, the qualities of DACs are so much better than they were like 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I want to scope that statement down and just say, so that they're so much better as long as you're keeping it within the scope of the domain of musical data, right? Like, because there's a bunch of people who are gonna, I'm sure they're already writing comments that are gonna be like, digital. They're going to push the metaphor over into the user experience as well, right? Because whenever you talk about analog digital, someone's going to say, well, or hardware versus software, right? They're going to say when you get to that UX place. So I'm scoping you down to within the realm of data, audio data.
I'm just talking about data.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the UX, because once you get to the UX part, like, there's so many open questions about workflow, how the person interacts with the hardware, or even the software themselves. I know for a fact that I don't do as much custom tuning on the VSTs. I'm more preset browsing and just tweaking them lightly, whereas on the hardware, I'm more likely to experiment with the filters and things like that to get my own custom sound. Psychological thing, it's kind of like with writing with paper. People write a lot more when they write things down on paper than if they type it on the screen. Same information. People retain a lot more information if they read it off a book rather than they do it on the screen. I don't know why. For some people it might work the other way, some people don't. But that's a broad statistical generalization. It's not a 100% set thing.
Well, that's how we get into really good arguments, right? By just generalizing everything.
Yeah, I know. I'm a data scientist / statistician, so I have to generalize. So.
Well, I mean, the best user experience as far as synths are concerned is the one that I like, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Obviously, but I will say this: people get in a tiff about digital versus analog, and what I mean by digital, I mean by like sound processor DSP, right? DSP type synthesis, which includes both hardware and software. Right, because you can get an FPGA with a DAC, and you can do DSP, and people will call, that's hardware. No, not really. It's still in the software domain. It's just that the FPGA is doing it for you.
Yeah, sure.
For those in the chat who don't know what an FPGA is, do you want to just make a very quick explanation?
Okay. An FPGA is a field programmable gate array. It's essentially a programmable piece of hardware which you can turn it into multiple pieces of equivalent digital systems. It doesn't do analog, it only does really digital systems. One of the biggest projects that you can get into, and it's dangerous because it's a rabbit hole, and I'm sure a lot of people would love it a lot, is the Mr. FPGA project, which simulates anything from an old Commodore, very early Commodores, all the way up to a Commodore Amiga, and every console in between in hardware, and it does it all through an FPGA, and it's cycle accurate, unlike software emulation. It does it perfectly, and that's the intent. And so an FPGA gives you a lot of flexibility in that digital domain on how you can implement lots of things.
I'm trying to think of what synths that do we own that have FPGAs in them. I think the Summit. I think the Novation Summit uses FPGAs. I think the Kyra, the Waldorf Kyra did, if that even exists anymore.
I don't know. I do know maybe the Hydrasynth might have an FPGA. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. I know the Kyra did, and I'm pretty sure the Summit does as well.
Summit does.
Yeah.
Chat is saying Summit does.
Cool. So in terms of that, software can do a lot more, especially FPGAs can do a lot more. A lot of the DSP can do a lot more. The nuance in the argument is people prefer this analog fatness sound. They talk about this, how analog sounds amazing.
Warm.
Kind of warm. That's it. That's it. Warm. I call it fat. I don't know why.
It's okay.
It's the same thing. When you play a bass guitar, people talk about, oh, you want that fat bass sound. So when it comes down to that warm sound, it's the slight imperfections in the electronic hardware on the interaction between the voltages, which gives it that warmth. But that is very specific to each instrument that has that architecture, and so they're not all equal, and they don't all equally sound the same.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Well, I don't know. I think it's charming, actually. Right?
No. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that from a production point of view, if you want all your synths to sound the same, it's troubling because they're all going to be slightly different to each other, which might be part of the character, which might you want. But from a manufacturing point of view, that gets into the tolerances issues and all sorts of other things.
At one point I had 3 Mother 32s. I was teaching a class, and through the class could take 6 students at a time, and they'd work in pairs. They each have a Mother 32 they would be working with. And the 3 Mother 32s I have, one of them sounded different from the other 2. Just flat out, filter all the way open, to everything tuned to A440. It sounded like different. It was buzzier, right? And the tolerances within the system are definitely apparent, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure every Lyra 8 out there sounds different than every other one slightly.
Yeah, and so circling back to digital, people prefer that warm sound, and it's not exactly something that's not reproducible in a digital system. It certainly can be in a DSP processing point of view, but you have to understand from a designing point of view, the person who's designing the DSP understand how those imperfections interact to create that sound. And I don't think enough research has been done. It's been moving slowly that we're kind of understanding what we like in terms of that warm sound, and we're slowly moving that way, and people are beginning to understand that more, and that modeling becomes more and more accurate. But yeah, like it's very subtle, and at the end of the day, if you want that analog warm sound and you're willing to live with the limitations of subtractive synthesis, because there's multiple synthesis techniques. If you want to live with the limitations of subtractive synthesis, maybe that analog warm sound might be good. Others are taking the hybrid approach, and again, hybrid's a bit tricky because the filters do color the sound, but if the envelopes are digital, they're going to be still way too accurate, and it's not going to quite give that full warm sound, because it's the interaction between the envelopes, the amp, and the filters which really give that warm sound.
I don't disagree, but I'm going to downplay the concept of warmth personally, because I think hearing and perception is so subjective and influenced by your expectation that I think it's like a non-argument. We may get to a point where, or we are at a point where we're reaching a point where we can model warmth in circuitry, but I don't know. I don't want to fixate on it too much, simply because.
I'm not going to disagree with you. All I'm saying is that people like that sound, and we do know how that happens. It's just a matter of modeling it into some degree.
Yeah. Well, so the third wave, I have to throw this out there because you touched on it. Biscuit, Half God, Half Beast, gets the pedantic award, which is a good award to get. I'm not disrespecting you. I give out a pedantic award for people who point out small things, and he just wants to point out that the Summit only uses FPGA for oscillators, and that the filters are analog, and the rest of the signal path up to the effects is analog, and then the effects are digital. So Biscuit, you get the pedantic award for this show. Congratulations.
Which I also find kind of funny, because people always talk about an all analog digital path, all analog path, or something along those lines, and then they get to the effects, and then all the effects go out the window. You have to implement a DAC, on an ADC to convert that back into the digital domain, so then you can do the effects that you want, and then reconvert it back out to analog, so it can go out the output jacks.
Yeah.
I always find that really funny, because
it's comedy. It's the same thing's true for pedals too, right? A lot of the pedals that are doing digital processing. It's like, they
all do digital. Yeah.
I mean, not all of them. I've got a few analog pedals here on the floor.
There's analog pedals.
But
most of the ones I've seen have been digital.
Yeah.
People seem to mostly lean on the digital ones.
Certainly in the synth domain, right? But all right. So where are we? We're halfway through. I have a couple other topics I wanted to talk about. So, but let's make sure that the chat, we're not missing anything in the chat. Wookie says that the Roland Space Echo emulation. Oh no, that's a discussion. Okay. And Biscuit says he's on the
side check going on Space Echoes.
Yeah, and Biscuit's on the Spectrum as expected, so that's fine. And Man with Beard says he'd love to try a Summit. Yep. So get your hand on FPGA. Let's see. Where I want to transition us though into system building, and I also want to just throw out there: did anyone get their mic working, Joe, or who else?
I don't know. Did I?
Yes, you did.
Hey, there he
I
is.
think I got my mic work.
All right,
Hey.
the Task Boy's in because I know Task Boy has opinions on this topic, and I wanted to make sure that he was.
Right now, I have strong opinions about Discord, but that's a different.
Well, that's fine. So for everyone,
and
this is
also Apple security. The two don't like each other.
Oh, nice.
At least on my computer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, turn your mic gain up slightly, Joe. You make yourself a little louder.
you want it louder?
Just a little bit.
Okay, or I can just
You could just shout.
go a little closer.
Proximity effect. If you get the proximity effect going, you have to be
ASMR.
careful because you may get a reaction out of Trusto. He really likes the proximity effect on the microphone when you get in.
ASMR.
You get in really close. He likes the ASMR stuff.
Yeah. Sorry. I had some thought. I think you hit the topic of guitar, analog, pure analog versus DSP, which is raging through the community like a wildfire, and always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
It's
the eternal thing. It's like, where do you put your curly braces and that kind of stuff.
It is a Bucket Brigade delay is quite lovely. I don't dislike it particularly. I have an old digital delay from the 80s that I guess people love the lo-fi sound of, and I hate it. I just plugged it in a couple months ago, and it was my main delay pedal, and it just sounds like crap. It just sounds like crap. It's crap. So
Tell us how you really feel. Okay.
Compared to what I have in I've got a stupid Scarlett box right here, and the audio processing in that to get the actual raw sound and produce it back at me is so much better, so much clearer. So I guess it depends on the game you're playing, right? I mean, I get the aesthetic argument, like, oh, for instance, vinyl is so warm, and I'm like, yeah, vinyl is so colored. The sound is so filtered, like a pair of cheap sunglasses. Oh, but I like that look. Okay.
Oh, so do you want to go on a let's not go a full bore, but we can go on a rant about how we feel about lo-fi. I'll start just by saying I'm sick of lo-fi. I'm tired of lo-fi. I really didn't like lo-fi at all when it started like cropping its ugly head up about 10 years ago, and I wish it would just go away because as a child of the 70s and 80s, the worst thing you could do when you're listening to a cassette of someone is turn on the Dolby B noise reduction. It made everything go away. You lost all your highs. You couldn't hear the hi-hats anymore. It's just crap.
It got rid of the hiss, though.
Yeah. It's like I am done with lo-fi.
With this or with Dolby B,
Yeah, it's like, so if you send, if you're going to submit any music to, for feedback for something, you're like, hey, listen to this. It's my new lo-fi jam. Just leave out the word lo-fi. If it says lo-fi, I might listen to it. I may not.
Yeah, maybe that should be a genre. Dolby B rather than lo-fi.
Well, it's certainly tape processing, right? More and more people are. Didn't Alex Ball have a video come out a couple weeks ago where he basically used like an old Fostex 4-track or 8-track to color the sound?
Few people have.
It was impressive.
A lot of people have been doing that lately, and it puts my teeth right on edge.
Yeah.
I have right under the desk, or maybe behind me, I've got my old cassette 4-track, and never again.
Oh, but at the time it was awesome. I remember. So, it
was a miracle.
When that first 4-track came home, right? My father was like, you're not allowed to touch this. This is for your mother and I, because my parents were musicians. He brought home a Fostex or a Tascam 4-track, and he was like, this is for our studio. You can't touch it. It was like torture, just wanted to get my hands on that thing, right? And then I learned that it used the full width of the tape to record the 4 tracks. So if you put it if you recorded 4 tracks and put it in a regular cassette deck, you got to hear 2 tracks being played backwards.
Yep. Two of the 4 channels going. Oh no, what?
Yeah, we were going.
Two channels going backwards, right and left, and then 2 going forward.
Yeah. Two were going forward and 2 were going backwards when you played it. So it was awesome. But anyway, so now I wanted to transition us into system building versus music making. So you guys fight it out who wants to go first. But basically, there's this idea that I've certainly recognized myself that I enjoy building systems as much as I enjoy making music, and it's two different things. And so if you work with a modular synth, or you like to build patches, or you like to work in the box and let's say you use Bitwig and you like the grid, or you like VCV Rack or any of that stuff, you're a system builder at that point. You're not necessarily making music. You may not necessarily be composing, and it's a spectrum, and you're blurring the lines. But that's the joy of system building. And so there's a lot of people who are, well, not a lot of people, but I have heard people criticize others saying, you don't actually make any music, you just collect shit. You collect gear and you collect VSTs, and you're just stuck in this Gasp place where you're just collecting stuff and you don't actually make any music. And then, from my perspective, it's like, well, those people are doing system building at that point, and that is another musical joy in and of itself. How do you guys feel about that?
Luckily, that never happens with guitarists, right?
Oh yeah, never.
I mean, never. Guitarists don't endlessly end up with an entire house full of guitars. And
oh, sure.
sorry, are people feeling seen right now? I'm sorry. That includes me.
No,
Includes me.
I was just saying,
Wait till you get to the.
friend who's got the guitar mahal. It's
I was going to say, wait till you get to the flat wound versus round wound debates.
oh, jeez.
It was fighting words.
It's round wound. The flat wound guys they've got something wrong with them.
Oh, now them's fighting words.
Got to do it for the clicks.
It's all right. I don't actually own a bass anymore. I play virtual ones. So one of you work it out. Who wants to tell us about the system or your experience building your system? Because I know all of you, for the most part, are system builders.
And we chuck that one over to Andy, because I was
going to say throw it to Andy, because he's got the big modular. His is most in evidence is his modular. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I'll build a system until all my spaces are filled, and I don't need any more bits. And in the meantime, I'm actually creating music as well and making people buy it. So it's
the real trick.
Although on the surface it might look like I'm the stereotypical system builder, I'm not. Well,
isn't patching building a system?
Well, all right. That's building a synth.
Okay.
That's not building a system.
There's a distinction. Okay, cool.
I thought what I mean. So when I assume what you mean by a system is that like for instance yourself, Luke, you've got umpteen synths in your studio there.
Allegedly.
And that is your system. Your system is your collection of synths.
That's not quite what I mean.
So,
now, actually, just to clarify, that's not quite what I mean. Like, in my studio, when all the synths were connected to Ableton all together, that was a system. Now I've got 3 clusters of synths that are all talking to each other, but the 3 clusters don't. Within a cluster, all the synths talk to each other, but between the clusters, they don't talk to each other. So I would call that 3 systems. And back when I had a modular, when I built a patch, I designed the patch with a piece of music in mind that I wanted to create. And so I would say I was building a system to realize that thing. Now you said instrument, you build an instrument when you're patching. So talk a bit about that, like the distinction between them.
Yeah, because
performance clusters.
Sorry?
Luke's building high performance synth clusters.
No.
Like Beowulf.
Beowulf synths.
Well, you can't see it very well there, but I mean, so there's some fixed architecture synths there. Okay, I don't have any choice about how they work. Okay, there are probably menus that allow me to change the internal routings of LFOs and stuff like that. So I mean, you could even say, well, there's a bit of system building, probably even in the OB12, for instance, because I can stipulate where which parts of the synth are modulated by LFO1 or LFO2. So there's that. Now the modular really is no different, except the cables are on the outside. and there's no menus. So,
I'm pretty sure there's a menu in that disting, man.
oh dear. Touche.
Let me know when that gets AI, because I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time till the disting wakes up. That's actually Skynet. Yeah.
No, but so I mean, the only difference between the fixed architecture synths and the modular is that the modular, the cables are on the outside. Okay, and it's more flexible because I can actually have a 12 oscillator voice. For why would I do that? But I could if I wanted to, with 6-7 filters. So I don't treat that as a system. And I mean the fact that I've had those since the JP8000, I've had that since 1997. So I'm not someone who is that interested in building up a system or a collection of synths or what have you. And I'm just realizing now. So I mean, I can see our Discord chat. This is a YouTube technical thing at the moment, so it might be your stream, Luke.
Yeah.
But I seem to always have like a floating head. Actually, it's gone off now.
So you look good now. You didn't look bad before. Sorry, I think I came out wrong.
Right, okay. Did anyone see when I put the webcam over to the other synths? Could you see that?
I wasn't watching.
I know I can see it in Discord,
Yes.
but anyway.
Yes,
I'm watching the chat, so if you guys, all bets are off as far as what you look like. That's on you.
So anyway, but yeah, that's my rough thoughts on. So I don't consider myself to be a builder of systems because the patching is no different.
Okay.
There's no difference between moving the cables around on a modular and going into the modulation matrix or the whatever matrix on your hardware fixed architecture synths. It's the same thing. It's just that in those synths it's virtual, and on that synth it's everything's there.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So Andy's so I'm not trying to label anyone as a system builder, but so Andy's interpretation for himself is that no, he's not a system builder. He's got instrumentation that he's manipulating it as regardless of whether it's a fixed architecture or
You could
variable.
say that Andy's under Andy's interpretation, that's quite valid. But I would say he probably is, but he doesn't quite want to admit it.
Let's not get into a fight about that.
No. All I'm saying is, like, particularly when you're dealing with modular, the choice of the modules that you pick and the particular functions that you have, the voicing and how you arrange them, whether they sit in the same box or even in a different box with a different purpose, that's part of system building. Like if you say, oh, my first row is going to be this filter, and the sound's going to be this around, and I'm going to use these particular sound generators or filters because I want this particular modulation to happen. That is something that you're subconsciously doing in building that modular system. That's what I'm saying.
But you're lumping me in there though with the group of modularists who are constantly. I mean, Ben would have been perfect for this, wouldn't he? On our Discord.
Yeah.
Ben is forever. I said to somebody last week. Take that screwdriver off Ben because he's forever swapping in and out modules. But even Ben, I would say, is not that much of a system builder. He'll have a task that he wants to do with his modular, and then he's got a case, X by Y, and he'll go, well, I've got this much space, and I've got that module, I need an oscillator, I need some filters, I like that particular sequence, so and he'll build up a system. I've got my capo in my hand, it's like a stress ball. He'll build a system for a particular project, but I don't put Ben into the system builder. So there's into that sort of, because correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but one of the arguments for the so-called system builder is that this guy spends more time making a system than he does making music.
Oh no!
And
I see where you're going with that. No. This is really just an exercise in framing. So I heard people criticizing others, saying you spend all your time collecting, right, or building stuff, and then I frame that with my own view of myself, saying, well, I see these as systems and I build them. I consider myself doing system building activities as well as music making activities. And then I put that out there. The whole point of this discussion really is me sharing that perspective to see if it resonates with any of you. In your case, not so much.
No.
In your view of Ben, no, you've got a distinction there for what Ben's doing. I'm curious if anybody else in the room it does resonate with.
I just want to jump in. I also see Andy's setup, and I've been watching it for months or years now. Time is fluid. But and I've often just looked at his modular rig, and I've always considered it just another synthesizer. And I realize it's, I'm a primitive K-boy and not a modular guy. But I look at him like, yeah, my cables are invisible electrons, and Andy has physical ones. But we do the same thing when we're doing some sort of sound design activity. I hope I didn't minimize your activities. Andy, but that's how I think of it when I see you going. And also, I don't see you moving your devices around. So you've got it wired, you got what you want, and then you kind of go in and you're like, this is the system. I'm going to do different things with it today. Now, I have a bunch of synths that none of you can see on camera. So, but I can do the same thing with Hydrasynth. I can just say, I'm going to use one oscillator as opposed to all three, right? Yeah. I'm just going to use one filter. I'm not even going to use mutators for whatever reason, So I don't know. I feel kinship when I see you putting the wires from here and there.
Yeah. Just to throw out one thing. Davi has said that we're all nerds. So having seen your stream, sir, I take umbrage at that statement. That's the pot calling the kettle black. Davi the Hug Monster says, y'all nerds. So just throw that out there.
I was going to say that I guess it depends on your point of view on how you define system, because now we're getting into the meta. Because if you look at it from a systems engineering point of view, systems engineering.
Oh, good God. You're getting dangerously close to my job. Please stop.
Oh, dude, you have no idea how dangerously close your job is to mine.
All right. Go finish your thought. Finish your thought. I've got a couple other things I want to talk about before we run out of time.
No. How about you go to the next point?
No, go for it. Finish your thought. That's fine. You might have to clarify what systems engineering is, because not everyone knows.
Well, it's the controversial take would be it's applied cybernetics.
Okay, now you are the nerd.
Yeah. Basically, it's an engineering field which anybody who works in any sort of engineering dreads going into. Basically, you look at a
no, stop. We'll argue about this in the Discord. So, that's fine. Okay, all right. Before we close out the system building, Garen, anyone else have resonate with being a system builder as well as a musician?
Well, I mean, yes, and I mean, I'm here building a system of selected instruments to fill the ability to make the sounds that I want to make, and so I draw on that, be it hardware synth or software synth or whatever. I draw on that system that's all interconnected to allow me to bring together those sounds and use those to make a song. And if a song wants its own set of patches, then I will go in and design a set of patches and build that in my system.
Right.
So to me, the system is, let's see, it's this or part of this, and it goes out to the whole room here, So it's this whole interconnected mass of stuff is the system that I have built, or that I am building, to use as the tool to make music that I want to make. That's my feeling on the system building thing. So, I want to have a system that allows me to do the things I want to do.
Yeah. Cool. I have a question for the chat, or anyone consuming the stream. Can you hear my dog crying outside my studio door? Because he's out there desperately trying to get into the studio, and I've texted my wife a couple times going, could you please come get the dog? He's trying to get into the studio, and he's like out there scratching on the door. I'm like, please come get the dog. Anyway, so no.
I don't hear him.
Nobody can hear the dog? Okay, good.
Bubba just wants more screen time.
He does.
Yeah.
He wants more. Yeah, I gave him some screen time on the last stream, and now he's like more. He's addicted. All right. Oh, so we have about 15 minutes left. There's another thing I want to talk about, and this is completely in a separate vein, but it's still in the synth zone, and it's something referred to as Schoenbergism, after Arnold Schoenberg, a composer from the, I think, Romantic period. So one of the things about the way we make our music, being hardware, software, right, sequencing with MIDI, or sequencing with CV and voltages, we are composing. We're composing our piece, right? We're coming up with our melodies and our harmonies, or our rhythms, or our textures, whether you're in drone or whether you're doing, song structure or whatever. We build our music up, and we're composing these things. So we are building a structure that represents the piece we're doing, right? Well, I used to I had a discussion with a peer a number of years ago where I told her I really like composing on the computer because the computer does exactly what I tell it to do. I say, you play these notes at this tempo in these places with this rhythm, and it does it reliably every time. It's repeatable, and I can save a project and open it up, and everything is exactly the way it was when where I left it, and I can continue to go do that. There's an aspect of my own performance, if I'm performing in there, that's variable, but generally, from a composing perspective, I like it when it does what I tell it to do, and no more, no less. And she turned to me and she's like, "Oh, you're a Schoenberg." And I didn't know what that was. She had to explain to me. So this composer, Arnold Schoenberg, said that he had some rules. Actually, I've got them. Let me pull them up here. He had some rules. The rules were precise notation. It's like he wrote very detailed scores with very specific instructions to minimize any room, to remove all personal interpretation. He did not want musicians to interpret what was on the score. It's like, play only exactly what I say and nothing more. And he would, get angry and yell at these musicians for doing interpretations. And he also wanted it all the way down to control over the sound. He believed that the composer should have complete control over the sound produced. And that led to him writing like these really precise articulations about, the articulation of the instrument and the dynamics and things into the scores. And the reason he was like this was that he was responding to this romanticism where everyone was like reinterpreting all these classic pieces and nothing was ever reproducible. But I like that. I find in myself, I am totally into this Schoenbergism where I wanted to do exactly what I wanted to do and nothing more. And that's something I really love about composing using synthesizers, all the way down to the sound. Like, I want control over the timbres that I'm hearing. How do you guys feel about that? Anyone fall into that camp, or overlap with it slightly, or maybe you're opposite? I
have a counter question for you, Luke.
Yeah.
If you had to tour, you put together 12 songs and you're going to tour those 12 songs, and you got a 40 city.
Yeah.
So we're talking a rarefied problem. But
Sure.
Just say it is.
You're gonna pitch the Frank Zappa angle at me.
Probably. Which is that? Yeah. Do you want to do the same show 40 times?
So,
or do you want, or at some point do you want, or how do you mutate it?
So
your satisfaction.
Frank. So I'm not I'm not a rabid Frank Zappa fan. And for anyone in the chat who's young enough that they don't know who Frank Zappa is, I'm sorry. Look him up. He was a composer first and foremost, but he was a performer and a dad, and he had good and bad parts about him, but a smart guy. Anyway, Zappa would do his performances, and he had his repertoire, and he had his band of killer musicians, right? And what they would do is he had, believe it or not, macros, the equivalent of a synth macro knob, where you have a knob you can turn and it's mapped to a bunch of different parameters, and you turn the knob and it changes it. he had conducting macros for when he would go perform. They would perform the same set, or maybe a variation of the set list, but over the course of a tour, they're performing the same songs over and over and over again. Well, part of being able to be in his band was to have to be able to understand the language of musical macros that he would use to change the performance for any given night, right? So it's like, we're going to do this song, but we're going to do it in the style of this macro now. And he had like hand gestures and eyebrow. They refer to it as putting the eyebrows on it. He'd say, yeah, every night we would do something different. We'd put a different pair of eyebrows on this song because it gets boring, right? And that was his approach. And I believe in that approach. Like, you can do that. This Metropolix sequencer out of frame down here, that's something that you can do where it's got 2 macro knobs on it, and you can assign those macros to a certain set of parameters. And sure, I'm going to perform the same song over and over again if I was on tour, but I would be cranking on those macros every night to keep it interesting. That's my approach there. But it's still, I think, Schoenbergism in that I want control, and I only want it to do what I tell it to do and no more. And if that's dialing a macro, fine, but that's still a very fine grain of control. So,
can I just put a question to Taskboy?
Yeah.
So one of the interesting complaints, the things that people have raised in classical music so far, has been the fact that it's been speeding up. Right. So just to prove Luke's point, like, if you were the composer back in those days and you realize that your music is being incrementally being sped up over centuries, that it no longer resembles the piece that you originally had in mind, right?
I mean,
yeah. Well, you're in now. We're wading into some deep waters. Who is the ultimate consumer of work? Who owns the work? You're like, well, no, the composer does. For a time, once it's out there, right?
Well, what do you mean?
This is.
What do you mean by the work, right?
So, well, so Luke, you do a piece, you like it,
Yep.
Put it out there exactly the way you intended it. People listen to it. Maybe they hear it. Maybe they're hearing what you hear. Maybe they hear something slightly different.
Yeah.
In their memories, they take it along. Maybe somebody tries to copy what you did, and they intend it to be high fidelity, but it's not. And slowly, if you have a popular enough song, it becomes part of a zeitgeist. Who was like someone was just talking. Oh, it's Jack White was just talking about this with Seven Nation Army. It's like, yeah, it's not my song anymore. Like I had my crack at it, but now I'm in a stadium watching some sort of sports ball, and the song comes on, the crowd goes nuts. It's not me anymore. I have no control over that.
Yeah.
Like I said, highly meta question you just asked. The other thing is, co-committing with this is, before the age of recorded music, you only had notation to go to. You don't really always understand what the composer it was intending. Right?
Yep.
So there's 2 problems, but we can set aside that old timey problem. No, we've got recordings. You know exactly what I meant it to sound like. I also think it's the audience, right? I mean, your audience. If the audience, after disco, everyone wants to make it danceable.
Well,
so.
I don't think Schoenberg was. Well, I have no idea what Schoenberg thought or not, right? Because someone else educated me to him, and I'm no expert. But from my perspective, I'm not trying to dictate the interpretation, but I'm trying to interpret the vibrations in the air that reach your ears. I want them to be exactly the vibrations I want them to be. Basically.
Oh, I get it from you. When you're doing it, like, this is what I intended. Perfect, and I'm not denying that. That's great. But again, once your music leaves you, or you're not around to direct it, I don't know. I mean,
if I'm not around to direct it and I catch you, it's copyright strike.
My
ghost lawyer will be in touch with you. Yeah, I understand.
Concepts that didn't exist at all. But let's just bring it up into an even bigger level, because now you know what you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because music can be interpreted as a language. You can say it is a language, and therefore it conforms to the normalities of languages, in which case it means that it evolves over time as well. Musical taste, musical language, musical theories, all this other stuff. Like they evolve, like any language. And also, like any language, an example of this would be English. Shakespeare, right? people have tried
Ooh.
recreating Shakespeare.
That was a
I know,
joke.
I've-
It's a joke.
No,
Because Andy was on here, I was trying to get a rise up. Go ahead.
So Shakespeare, for example, people are beginning to reinterpret Shakespeare using what they called old pronunciation or original pronunciation. And what they found is that Shakespeare had puns in it, and it rhymed a lot more in the OP rather than how we now do it, like this very theatrical, very formal style of Shakespeare. So, there's an effect of that. Like, the language has drifted, the interpretation has drifted, and, Shakespeare used to be a comedy, he used to write comedies, and now they're all very serious performances, with very elaborate staging and everything like that. And so, I'm just saying,
I'm waiting for where you're going with this.
music.
Gotta rope it back into synths, man. Gotta rope it back into
rope it back into synths, right? So, music is a language, right? It is subject to the forms of language, and unlike in the past where people had to write down that language, for somebody else to interpret it, right? Which was very prone to the English, drifting thing.
Yep.
Nowadays, it's the devices themselves that we tell to make our music provide no feedback or interpretation. They are completely enslaved to the will of the conductor, and therefore we can make a concrete recording of what we intended. But if we ever should
Unless
release
they're
the
analog
music,
machines.
Unless they're you're making the analog joke. I was gonna say lo-fi, but go ahead.
yeah, but
Same
as
deal.
soon as we transcribe that into a piece, like here's the sheet music for this particular piece, it now becomes subject to the language limitations.
Yeah.
Because the technology is freezing the recording and our intentions in time. But as soon as that is freed and is subject to the interpretations of humans, it's going to drift. And there's nothing we can do at that point. And to Frank Zappa's point, Task's point with Jack White, once it's out there, it's out there. You have no control whatsoever. You cannot direct it anymore.
Yeah. No. Well, so
Adam Neely also has a video about this, about some of the challenges he had transcribing synth music, as a matter of fact, and he came up with new notations for some of the crazy stuff you can do with synths. So yeah, I don't have the citation. I'm sure you can find it.
No. Well, we're coming up on 3:00. I think we can wrap it up. So for everyone in the chat, thanks for hanging with us. For the gentleman in the room, thank you for joining me. This is an experiment. This is, I don't know what we call this, Sunday Synth Salon as opposed to shenanigans. We might do another one of these in the future if it was useful or entertaining, or after we let it cook for a week, when we go back and look at it, if we don't cringe too much, we might do another one of these. Technical glitches aside, we'll figure that out. But if this was useful or entertaining, just leave a comment to that effect. Most people, being the internet, all we really ever get is complaints. So if you enjoyed what you saw today, let me know. And otherwise, and don't fear, it's not the new norm, but it was a lot of fun, and thank you. Thanks, gentlemen, for showing up. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's been fun.
We got to get your camera, man. But other than that,
I need better lighting, don't I?
yeah, and I think Steve got to speak at the beginning, but he didn't chime in very much, and that could be my fault for not calling out, because you were so quiet, I forgot you were here, Steve. I'm sorry.
Dude,
But-
your sample pack is awesome.
But I can't see your cat giving itself a
look,
bath now.
It's Luna. There she is.
Yeah,
Hello, Luna. Hello, Luna.
nice.
There you go.
So that's it. Thanks, everyone. Have a good time. The Symptoms of Reality stream is about to start in a few minutes. If they start
Can I
on
just
time.
break in? Sorry to interrupt you, Luke. They put it back till 3:30.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
On that.
so
And
that's fine. That's a running joke with us. So at 3:30, the Symptoms of Reality stream will start. I'm going to go hang out there. And thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you later. Okay. See ya.
See you later, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ta-ta.
See you on the Discord.